just how racist are Trump supporters? Well, it turns out they're more racist than most Republicans. This is according to a new Reuters Ipsos opinion poll. Now, according to the poll, those who back Trump's White House bid are more likely to use disparaging terms when it comes to describing African Americans, using the words such as criminal, unintelligent, lazy, and violent. This is compared to other voters for other GOP candidates. Now, let me break this whole thing down here. Nearly half of those people supporting Trump said African Americans were more violent and criminal than white people. About 40% described African Americans as more lazy than white people. Roughly 1/3 of Trump supporters described blacks as less intelligent than whites. 40% of Trump supporters described blacks as more lazy than whites. As I mentioned, 44% of Trump supporters described blacks as more rude than whites, compared to 30% of Clinton supporters who did the same thing. And I'll get to more Clinton supporters later on in this poll. And strangely, Bernie Sanders wasn't really covered all that much in this poll, which is surprising. Now, nearly half of all Trump supporters described black people as more violent than whites, as I mentioned, and nearly half of all Trump supporters describe blacks as more criminal than whites. So, significant numbers of Americans also view blacks as more negatively than whites, according to the poll. However, Trump supporters are the most critical of African Americans, as we've seen. Now, this isn't just among Republicans, right? Among Clinton supporters, 1/3 view blacks as more violent and criminal than whites. About 1/4 said blacks were more lazy than whites. That's still pretty fucking bad. This is amazing. These people actually think blacks are more violent and criminal, and they'll try to cite statistics to say that black people commit more crimes to sort of justify their positions. Now, black people, I have some information here. Black people make up roughly 13% of the U.S. population. White people make up 64% of the population. However, black people make up 40% of the prison population, and white people 39%. So why the disparity, right? Well, there are some reasons. Now, even though there are roughly 5 times as many white people as black people in the country, blacks and whites are incarcerated in equal numbers. That's what these numbers point out. However, just because they're incarcerated in equal numbers, despite there being more white people, doesn't mean that black people are more inherently violent or criminal. Here's why we have these numbers. If a black person and a white person each commit a crime, the black person is more likely to be arrested. Now, this is due in part of African American communities being more heavily policed. There's more police there. If there are more police there in a heavily African American area, they're going to make more arrests. Now, that's of course due to the perception that white people don't commit as much crime. So therefore, we need to police them less, even though they commit crimes at an equal level. It's amazing. Now, for example, black people and white people smoke pot at the similar rate. Yet black people are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for possession of marijuana. And when they do get arrested, they're convicted more often than a white person is for the exact same crime. And of course, when they're convicted, they're more often to get prison sentences. So it's not because they have a predisposition to crime. It actually has a lot to do with how the justice system treats them, which, by the way, creates these statistics that circle it back around as to why the justice system is generally more harsher on African Americans. And that's not even adding socioeconomic factors in. Poor whites and poor black people commit crimes at about the same rate. And when it comes to black on black crime, well, if you live in a primarily black neighborhood, it's likely that some of them will do criminal acts against each other, because that's mostly who's around. Just like white neighborhoods will at some point be victimized by another white person. As far as black on white crime, well, that can be explained mostly because there are just more white people in America. And look, not all criminals live in areas with just their own races. Now, back to the poll here, and speaking of diverse communities, slightly more than 1/3 of Trump supporters said they would prefer to live in a community with people from diverse cultures. Well, That's good that it's at least more than a third, while about 70% of Clinton supporters said the same. Well, there you go, diversity. Among Trump supporters, 31% also said they strongly agree that social policies such as affirmative action discriminate unfairly against white people. While only 16% of Clinton supporters said the same. Well, affirmative action is a bit of a difficult thing, right? I want to get to a place where we don't need affirmative action anymore. But at this point, we have proved incapable of treating African Americans and Latinos the same as white people. Until we get our act together, programs like affirmative action are needed. But I am worried that it might have the opposite effect of creating racial resentment. So that's the issue. I don't want to have the need for affirmative action, but right now there still seems to be a lot of racism institutionally that we need those programs to try and correct. As I said, the goal should be to get away from those programs, but we're not there yet. Now, another interesting point. Although Bernie Sanders wasn't really mentioned much in the article, it was found that, to no surprise, supporters of Bernie Sanders were the least racist of anyone, which is no shit. But if you ask mainstream media during the primary, racist, sexist, Bernie bros, all of them, hating on the black people. No, that's actually not what happens. It's actually not what happened at all. But of course, mainstream media is going to do what mainstream media does. They're going to protect the powerful. Now, with this poll, is it any wonder why Donald Trump gets a measly 1% of the black vote? And I'm surprised he's even received that much. Now, this poll isn't to say that Donald Trump supporters are racist. No. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's a lot of factors of where people actually support Donald Trump. Race doesn't always factor into it. However, if you are a racist, you just happen to be more likely attracted to people like Donald Trump. And that's what this poll is really pointing out.